Chapter 11 Dungeon 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Tomorrow. I'll level up. I'll definitely level up. And just before I fell asleep, I glanced over at the crunchy and dead leaves beside me. I awoke late in the morning, my body sore from all the running and tension yesterday. Before moving towards the cave not too far away, I went hunting for a few berries as I felt my stomach rumble. But, I wanted to do this first. My starvation was so bad that it kept weakening my body, so I needed to complete my task quickly. I picked up a large pile of dead and dry leaves and moved it over to the cave. I felt another chill get sent down my spine, but I proceeded with my plan, trying my best to ignore the bloodthirsty presence hiding within the cave. The leaves rustled as I set the last pile of leaves next to the entrance. Iron ants have already gathered at the entrance, but they can't leave due to the transparent wall blocking their exit. Okay. And now, I dug my hands under the pile of leaves and pushed them through the barrier. Some landed on the ants, some floated in the air, and some were swept deeper into the cave. Click, one of the ants clacked its mandibles together, creating a spark that floated through the air. Click, another ant slammed its mandibles together, creating another spark that this time lasted longer than the previous one. But before it could even reach a leaf, it disintegrated into nothing. Click, one of the sparks created by the ant's mandible managed to land on one of the leaves, erupting into flames. The fire quickly coated the inside of the cave, burning the ants alive. But, my main objective wasn't to burn them but to exhaust all the oxygen inside. It was a bit of a gamble but with no risk for me, which is why it was so great. Though, I kept thinking this would work due to the fire from behind the barrier not coming back out of the barrier, which means oxygen might work the same. This probably won't work, I muttered to myself before glancing up at the few panels above me, but had no reaction because I already expected to kill some of them. 5 XP, 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 some of the iron ants behind the barrier were completely toasted to the core while some just barely managed to survive, scurrying back farther into the dungeon, trying their best to escape the fire. Now, it's time to wait. For a few hours, I went hunting for more berries as I waited for more XP to come, but disappointingly, I never received any. Just to make sure, I jogged back to the cave after eating a few berries. Yep, no XP, I muttered. I lost my gamble but at least I gained some experience points. But just as I was about to head towards civilization, I felt a chill run down my spine once again. I glanced back and saw the silhouette of a massive ant with spikes peeking its head out of the cave. It wasn't out of the barrier, but it felt like it could attack me at any moment. I'll be back, I mutter with a smile. Huff 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 huff. Finally, civilization, I mutter, staring down from the green hill I was on. I had arrived at civilization, but it was looking much different from my previous idea of a city. Tall buildings made of high-quality materials scraped the clouds. Transportation using fancy wheels, on neatly paved, black, roads. The clothes used by the citizens were strange as instead of showing off their muscles or seductive bodies, they covered them up with long clothes. It didn't even seem like winter or fall but just decided to accept the fact that this was probably a different world. Surrounding the cities were large trees and mountains with the same brown and orange theme. I slowly walked down the hill, my eyes scanning the entrance. It was a large bridge across a moat that surrounded the entire island. Like city. Well, it was an assumption as I couldn't really see the end of the city nor could I see if the moat wrapped all the way around due to how large the place was. Across the large bridge was a single line of people, not using any form of transportation. I also noticed something that felt a bit nostalgic. Robes, I muttered. As soon as I arrived at the bridge, I received many stares due to my ragged and tattered brown clothes, with severe malnutrition as well. I wasn't that dehydrated as I found a few puddles throughout the forest, so I drank from them, fully accepting that I was going to get sick. But somehow, I'm doing fine. I lined up at the very back of the line and was greeted by a man in armor. Huh. Why is there a man in armor all of a sudden when the others are wearing those weird clothes? But when I looked just a bit farther ahead, I noticed the group in front of me had robes and all types of armor on. I wanted to ask why they were wearing such strange things but restrained myself in order to not draw any more attention than I already had. Night POV, ugh, I'm so tired, the woman next to me says as she leans on her staff as if it was a cane. Stop complaining. The entire raid party is exhausted, so just shut up and wait, a man beside me says. The stench of blood on us was horrendous, but we couldn't do anything about it until we got back to our lodging. Hey, at least we finished the dungeon this time, I say with a smile, and everybody's exhausted expressions were filled with just the tiniest bit of joy. I gripped my hand tightly as scenes of the past dungeon raid flashed through my mind. We've lost 4 today. With 12 remaining. Hey, don't mind it. At least we lost less than last time, my best friend says, placing his hand on my shoulder. You're right. But we still had deaths, I reply. ****. Come on man, you gotta get used to it, otherwise, your future is just going to be miserable. Dude. Arthur. You good? My friend tries to catch my attention, but my eyes were stalking the boy who was currently walking down the green hill beside us. He was severely starved, malnourished, sleep-deprived, and a bit dehydrated. He lined up behind our raid party and just stood there in silence. His eyes were strange though, they seemed mature. Too mature in fact. It was as if I was looking at a man about the same age as me. Let's go check on him, I say, and Ellie beside me followed. Boy, where did you come from? I asked him. Intimidation subconsciously rubbed off of me, but the boy didn't flinch in the slightest. And then, he smiled. Where am I? He asks, the air around him shifting as if the previous look on his face was never there. You're in Amla's, Ellie replies. The boy's childish face distorted upon hearing her words. Chapter 12 Wrong City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I wanted to ask why they were wearing such strange things but restrained myself in order to not draw any more attention than I already had. But, my hopes were crushed as 2 of the strangely dressed people in front of me came up to me and asked, Boy, where did you come from? I shifted my face to a more childish expression as I thought I could use these people to hopefully enter the city and get me some food, water would be nice, new clothes as well. I wanted to throw up from the expression I forced myself to make but suppressed it as a woman in light armor responded. You're in Amla's, she says with a smile. Huh. Amla's. Not New York City. Where is New York City? I'm from there, New York City. That's pretty far from here. It's about a day's walk away from here, the mature man in full armor responds. He was standing right beside the woman and observed me carefully as if he could see right through me. Well. I don't need to go to New York anyway. It didn't have anything I needed, and I just wanted to go there since it was the closest city possible. Guess I overshot. I'm hungry and thirsty, I say, directing my eyes at the woman who clearly took pity on me. She would be easier to manipulate rather than the stern man beside her. Oh, wait a second, I have some rations and a bit of water left. Here, have my water bottle, and I'll get the ration sack, she says, handing me a leather pouch plugged with a cork. She then dashed off to the front of the group, where it seemed a porter was holding all their equipment. He was massive. He looked as if he could lift a mountain with how much muscle he had. But for some reason, he was just carrying around a giant backpack. I drank the entire sack of water and ate all of the rations the woman had given me before asking for more. She kindly smiled before giving me another batch which I consumed once again. And another. And another. Oomph. I'm gonna throw up, I mutter, kneeling on the ground. Why did you drink and eat so much? The woman asks, patting my back as she got on one knee next to me. I just thought I'd never get to eat and drink this much again, I respond. Aw ee. It's okay, come to us if you ever need help. I'll give you food much tastier than this next time, that was too easy. Thank you, miss, I say as I got up, holding my stomach. My stomach was hurting, but I dramatized the reaction a bit to weaken the guard around everybody surrounding us. I then glanced back at the man from before, and he stared at me with cold eyes. Ellie, let me have a chat with this kid for a second, he says, and Ellie immediately complies. Huh. So I guess this guy is the final boss. He pulls me to the side before crouching down to my height. Look. I don't give a shit what you do. But if you touch my raid party, I swear I'll kill you, he says, his bloodlust completely overwhelming me. His entire body had disappeared, leaving just a silhouette with glowing yellow eyes. Sure, I respond, sweat dripping down my cheek. Good. Now, I'm not as heartless as to leave a starving child to die out here, so we'll help you in, but we're not taking care of you like your parents, he says before getting up and walking back to his group. That was scary. John. What's up, man? Anything been happening recently? The man from before gleefully greeted the guard at the end of the bridge. 3 guards were blocking the entrance into the city. Metal armor, a sword slung across their waist, and a badge on their chest plates. Nope. Just the usual. I'm thinking of asking for a transfer request. Maybe I'll go help take out some of the surrounding powerful dungeons, the guard replied. Well, you can join our raid party anytime you want. Just give me a call, and I'll let you in, the man from before says as we continue our way forward. But suddenly, I was interrupted by a blade blocking my way. He's with us, I still can't let him in. He looks like a slummer from another city, I can guarantee he is not. Any proof? No, you just have to believe my word. The 2 men stared at each other until, after a few passing seconds, the guard retracted his sword and slung it back across his waist. ****. None of you better snitch, the guard says, pointing at the entrees and guards around him. He clicked his tongue in one last protest of annoyance before letting me through. Marvelous. That was the only thing that came to mind. The city was grand, made of materials I never thought existed. Pretty cool, right? One of the guys from the group said as we walked down the side of the road, getting greeted by a few people on the way. After a few minutes of walking, we arrived at a building, but instead of it having a door to get inside, it was like a stand that you would sell food at. Raid party. Iron Lions, did you fail or succeed? The man from before continuously answered the receptionist's questions. I glanced at the words atop the stand engraved into the building. An adventurer guild. I muttered. This place is where we gain access to dungeons and complete certain tasks within them. We then exchange the items we got from the dungeon for money here, the woman named Ellie informs. Ellie, stop rambling useless shit to him. He won't understand it, a man from the group says just as the man finished his business. Okay, what's the passcode to your ring again? The receptionist mutters as she takes the ring slid across the quartz piece separating the two. Don't bullshit me, the receptionist chuckled a bit before muttering something that caused the ring to glow a dim gold. Then the corpses of what I assumed to be wolves appeared behind her in the room behind the stand. Here, you don't have to keep jumping. Let me help you up, Ellie says as she places her hands under my armpits and lifts me up onto her shoulder. Anyway, Arthur, who is that kid? He looks like he's knocking on death's door, the receptionist asks as she counts each corpse. Those wolf corpses have horns atop their head. So they are monsters as well. Also, that man's name is Arthur, noted. He's some kid we picked up on the street. He did look like he was about to die, so we gave him some food and water, I see. Well, your reward has been sent to your bank account. Have a nice evening, she says before we walk away. After a couple of hours of walking, the sun had fallen, and we quickly arrived at an inn. It had an old feeling to it, and the wood smell was a bit nostalgic. "Okay, we're going to try and find you a place to stay tomorrow, so sleep with us tonight," Arthur says, clearly not as annoyed with me as before. Chapter 13 Adapting quickly. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It had an old feeling, and the wood smell was a bit nostalgic. "Okay, we're going to try and find you a place to stay tomorrow, so sleep with us tonight," Arthur says, clearly not as annoyed with me as before. Thank you, I at least had basic manners. But first, let's change and then have some dinner. None of them had clothes that fit me, so I was forced to wear the same tattered clothes as always, but at least they were washed. We then had a nice dinner filled with actual flavor. Bitterness. Sweetness. Sourness. Tastes I hadn't experienced in a long time flowed into my mouth through the variety of dishes. And upon finishing everything, I entered a food coma, never to be seen awake again, until the next morning. Alright, Orion, get your ass up. We're leaving now, Arthur says, waking me up from my peaceful slumber. I ate too much yesterday, so I threw up most of it as soon as I tried to get out of bed. That was a lot of money, sorry. I respond before washing my face, brushing my teeth with my newly acquired toothbrush, and washing my hands because I got a bit of puke on it. We then made our way downstairs, where the rest of the raiding party was having breakfast. But just as I was about to sit down at one of the tables, Arthur grabbed the back of my shirt and lifted me up in front of him. "We're going, can't I have breakfast? You gotta learn to not overeat. Don't stuff yourself if you're still full," though Arthur said that, I was thinking it had an undertone beneath it. "If you don't want me around, just say it," I say as we exit the inn and make our way down the sidewalk. "I don't want you around, you weren't supposed to say I." Suddenly, Arthur picked me up and covered my mouth as we slipped into an alleyway. The shadows provided cover for us as Arthur's eyes stalked the men in robes before us. Just like his party's name, he's a lion, who stalks his prey. "What's wrong?" I ask as soon as he lets me down. "They're an enemy party from an enemy guild we're currently at war against, but I don't see never mind." "I understand," I respond. As Arthur had already figured me out, I didn't need to be wary and act childish around him. "Yeah, it hasn't turned into a physical war yet." "Well, some of it is physical, but I do think a civil war is coming," Arthur says as we walk back onto the street. "That's cool." "I don't care, but that's cool." "You little, sigh. You look like you have something else you want to ask." "Go ahead, okay." "Well, I've been meaning to ask, but why are you dressed in armor while everyone else is not?" "I mean, some people are also dressed in armor, but very few, that's because we're adventurers. And though it sounds like a cool job, it's not. We make a lot of money, but that, of course, comes at the sacrifice of human lives." "What do you do?" "Ah, right. Well, we just enter dungeons scattered outside the city and go inside them. We then complete a task or quest and then leave the dungeon. If we can, we try to complete it because the final boss and task rewards we get to keep." "Did you do that last time?" "No, we lost too many people." "You normally do it with lower level dungeons anyway." "That's cool." "It's not." "Sounds cool to me." "Well, it's not." There was then a long awkward silence as we walked through the city and all the way to the edge where a large school was. "You'll be staying here. It's free, but just be wary of the nobles. They're assholes, so just stay away from them," he says as we enter the front door. "Welcome. Are you here to register your child?" "I'm here to register, child," Arthur emphasized the "a" for obvious reasons. Okay, well, please fill out this form." "But, I will say, you need parent permission for them to stay here," the receptionist woman says. Arthur looked back at me, and I already knew what he wanted me to do. "My parents are dead." "Oh. Please excuse my manners. I was unaware." "No, I should have assumed so." Please forgive me, the woman says, bowing deeply, but Arthur just waved his hand. She immediately got back up and helped Arthur hands on now as she felt a bit guilty. It took quite a while due to Arthur not being my legal guardian, but eventually, we managed to figure it out after a few hours. Okay, we'll provide everything necessary here. You can come to visit any time you want, but please be wary of his schedule. Since you signed him up for a lot of hard classes, the receptionist says, her face paling upon looking at what I learned was a tablet. He'll be fine, Arthur says before leaving me. See ya, I say, and he just waves without looking back. Look at this asshole trying to look cool. I saw you blushing when the receptionist got next to you. Okay. Orion, what a cool name. Let's get you to your dormitory. Mr. Arthur requested to put you in a single room for disclosed reasons, but if you would like to move, just give us a word. Well, I guess I leave my fate in the hands of the gods. For what happens next? Status, name. Orion, race. Human, level. 1/10, 41/100, XP needed, HP, 10/10 MP 5/5 SP 5/5. Normal human, strength 0.1. Subhuman, defense 0.1. Subhuman, magic. 0. Normal human, speed 0.1. Subhuman, skills. Tangible bloodlust, unknown POV, bahahahaha. I should have had him. He would have been the perfect match for my system. Shut the hell up and get out. I'm sick and tired of people coming here. Servants. Have no other god enter. The same man who sat on a throne made of blades says. Well. He would have been perfect for Athena, a sly man with snake-like eyes says. I know. So get out. Okay, the sly man quickly left the dark castle before being greeted by a few of his servants. How was he? He was all right. Not in the best state of mind. Like always, but I do think he made the right move. The boy's potential in being a strategist and jobs akin to a strategist I'd say is on a duke level, a duke. One of the servants shouted in surprise. Yep. But it seems he also has a talent for war. I don't want to see him break too soon from Ares, but we can't do anything. I see where he's trying to guide him as well. But Athena, who is the strategy part of war, would have been the perfect fit for him, but I guess he wants to make the boy a perfect all-rounder type. Such a shame. He could have been even greater than Athena if it wasn't for Ares. Well. We'll see. Let's leave it in the hands of fate, Orion POV, and so, a few years have passed, and I was finally able to leave that stinking school. Okay, goodbye, miss. I thanked the one teacher I liked, the receptionist, from the very beginning of my journey at this hellish school. Goodbye, and I wish you the best of luck in high school. Thank you, I reply before stepping onto the teleporter. Chapter 14 Absorbing Information. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Goodbye, and I wish you the best of luck in high school. Thank you, I replied before stepping onto the teleporter. I grabbed the handles of my backpack as I waited for the golden light to envelop me. My vision distorted, and it felt as if my stomach had flipped upside down. An extreme sensation of nausea overcame me as I appeared on the other side of Amlas, where my new high school life would begin. I managed to get a scholarship into one of the top schools here, but just like when I first entered the boarding school that I stayed in for quite a while, I was warned of the nobles. I didn't have many encounters with them in the boarding school, but I definitely understood what they meant. They harassed the lower-level nobles and some of the poorer kids, who basically ended up like slaves. Though, I established myself as somebody not to fuck with on the first day by bashing one of the little kids who tried to bully me around, with a large book. He's still in the hospital to this day. Obviously, his noble family came to talk to me and, upon hearing that I don't have family, lost interest in me as if their son's coma meant nothing to them. But I guess that's also why I don't have any friends, I muttered. My body had grown a lot, and now that I'm 14 years old, I can see my stats slowly rising. Status, name. Orion, race. Human, level. 1/10, 41/100, XP needed, HP, 10/10 MP 5/5 SP 5/5. Normal human, strength. 1. Subhuman, defense. 1. Subhuman, magic. 0. Normal human, speed. 1. Subhuman, skills. Tangible bloodlust. I haven't done anything yet. My stats have increased by 2 points, now putting me in the positive range. When I first saw this I almost cried because I thought I would never surpass 0. I'm so proud of myself, I mutter as I stare up at my status. I then glance down at my body, which had grown quite a bit. I was about 5 feet 6 inches with a skinny and pale body. I grew out my long dark purple hair but also realized the tips were slowly fading into a light purplish, grayish color. Frankly, my body is so weak that I can't do many physical activities, so I spent most of the time indoors, just studying and studying and studying. But there was a cap to the knowledge I could obtain in that boarding school, as it was meant for young children rather than teenagers. Most of the information I obtained was about the city and the history of the city. There were some snippets of information on dungeons, but nothing that I haven't learned already from Arthur. Though the most interesting thing that I have learned over these past few years is the information on this world. It's so bare that you'd think this was a newly discovered planet. First of all, there are 14 continents, and they branched from an original 7 that had all split up after an unknown event. But, the original sizes of those continents and the sizes of the continents now just didn't add up. The ones today are at least double the size of the originals. Then there is the fact that different races suddenly appeared after this unknown event, which I keep speculating was the turning point for this world. But besides all that, it was as if all the information was being covered by a looming shadow. Welcome, may I see your student card? The lady at the school gate asks, so I pull out my phone and show my student ID to her. She then scans my digital ID with an L-shaped device. Thank you. You may enter, that I then enter the gate, taking in the fresh morning air. Would you like to join the fencing club? Somebody suddenly comes up to me with a stack of papers. And within a few seconds, even more people flocked around me, but I wasn't special as I noticed everybody here was getting swarmed. I'm not interested, and upon saying that, they left me in an instant with still a joyous smile on their face. Weird. After checking the time on my phone, I entered the school and saw that I had about 30 minutes left until the opening ceremony would start. Guess I have enough time to hit the library. I heard the library in this school had the most information, but you had to pass specific tests in order to access the higher levels. But I should still learn more than in that boarding school, I muttered as I walked through the hallways. The hallways were grand, filled with all types of students. Some were arrogant. Some were kind. Some were introverted. And some were extroverted. There were also a few new species in this school that weren't present in my first life. It mainly consisted of elves with a few dark elves scattered around. I didn't know the history between them, but I already assumed they were on bad terms as I always saw them arguing. But it wasn't something like rivalry. They literally threatened to kill each other and their families. May I see your student ID? The librarian asks. She was an old woman who didn't seem as old as her appearance showed. Her face was slightly wrinkly, her eyes seemed to sag a bit, and her long hair was gray, but besides that, her body was that of a middle-aged woman. She was about 6 feet in height and had an hourglass body. Thank you. You may enter, she says before hopping back onto her computer after she scanned my ID. Is this what Arthur called a MILF? Hey, Granny. I shouted as nobody was present around me. What? She asks, clearly annoyed with my shouting. How do I take the test for the next level? But she ignored me. Granny. She ignored me again. This time I walked up to her desk and said, "Granny. Stop calling me Granny." She shouts, standing up and slamming her desk. "Kay, what a weirdo," she mutters before sitting back down, holding herself back from punching me in the face. "How do I take the next level test?" "You can't right now. You're only a freshman, that's troublesome." "Maybe, is there an exception?" "Yes, but judging from your stats, I'm sure you're not planning to be an adventurer." "What do you mean by that?" "If you want to be an exception, you need to take the adventurer test, which grants you higher leverage in this school upon passing. But, it's just not worth taking since you'll probably die no matter how high your stats are." "Ah. Well, that's fine," I respond, heading back to the wide selection of books. I walked through alleys in between each large bookcase and grabbed the ones I noticed had the word "basics" in them. I needed to learn more, but first, I needed to build a good foundation so I could actually learn the more advanced things. But, one particular book caught my eye. "This is Greek," I mutter. I was fluent in 2 languages, Greek and English. But isn't this a different world? I mean, there are fantasy races, monsters, dungeons, futuristic buildings, and unseen transportation. But then there's Greek right in front of me. The main language from my original world. I slid it out of its neatly packed case and read the title out loud as if I was in a trance. "The History of Ancient Greece." I opened it up and disappointingly was greeted with English. But, I continued to read through the book as I was intrigued by the word Greece. I dove farther and farther into the information, feeling it flood my mind like a wave at the beach flooding. I was in a trance once again, but all of a sudden, I arrived at a part that made my heart drop. It felt as if the world around me had stopped. In the year 404 BC, Athens was forced to surrender to Sparta, thus putting an end to the Peloponnesian War. Ding dong, kid. The opening ceremony is about to start. Chapter 15 New Quest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the year 404 BC, Athens was forced to surrender to Sparta, thus putting an end to the Peloponnesian War. Ding dong, kid. The opening ceremony is about to start. I snapped out of my trance and looked up at the clock hanging on the wall. It was now exactly 10:00, so I decided to drop all of the other books and bring the Ancient Greece text to the front desk and check it out. "I'll see you later," the librarian says as I soon make my way towards the large auditorium, big enough to store a jumbo jet. Grand chandeliers hung from the ceiling, thousands of students flocked to the center of the room, staring towards the front where a stage was planted. Who I assumed to be the teachers, stood on that stage with a very old man in the center, near a microphone. "Welcome." The old man's voice boomed through the room. Everybody pumped their fists and shouted in excitement, causing adrenaline to rush through our veins. It was as if I was back in the Colosseum, watching warriors duke it out for survival. "I welcome you all to the greatest school to ever exist in the city of Amlas." The old man looked as if he was about to knock on death's door any second, but his voice boomed through the auditorium as if he was a Colosseum announcer. Everybody roared in excitement as you could feel the adrenaline blowing through the air like a gust of wind. "Okay, settle down. First, I shall introduce all the teachers and then go over the objective of this academy." The man introduced every single teacher on the stage, but I only paid attention to the ones who I had as professors for the classes I was taking. I had 3. The first was for my first class on magic theory. The teacher was a man in his mid-20s who was slim, had stubby black hair, and dark brown skin. My second class was a combat class called spear theory. The teacher was a middle-aged man, built like the trunk of a tree. He was insanely swole and buff, but he didn't come near the man from the magic tower who tried to kill me. That man was built like a brick shit house. And finally, my last class was on something called gun theory. Guns are a piece of technology that I found about 2 or 3 years ago. I was shocked by how intricately it worked. We could have never thought of technology like this in my past life. War, disease, famine consumed us from every side, cornering us, but we were still forced to push through them. There was a time when I wanted to be a scholar, but that quickly ended up going down the drain after I was drafted into the army. Scholars were rare back in my past life, and despite them being the only people who could potentially push us farther into the world of science, they weren't very popular. The government pushed the idea of being a warrior into something that was bloated rather than filled, as it wasn't as nice as how they made it out to be. The teacher didn't look too bad as well as he was pretty young and had long curly brown hair. Okay. Those are all the professors, but now I'm sure you're wondering what the objective of this academy is. Well, it's quite simple, really. To raise the greatest humans in existence. The crowd roared as even I felt a rush of adrenaline spike through my veins. We have already grown talents who now lead the world. What's stopping us from raising more? You all will be the future of the world, so take pride in it. You are all equal here, so study and train till you're content. Scream until your heart is content and never forget your roots. The old man shouts at the top of his lungs. The crowd roared once again, but this time I felt no adrenaline. They're all the same. What's wrong? The librarian asks me as I scroll through an article meant to explain the basis of guns and how they have evolved over time. Apparently, guns used to not use magic. And even when magic was starting to be implemented into society, they couldn't implement magic into guns due to this thing called magic overload. I already don't like this school, you know. I can tell the headmaster and get you removed, right? Sure. I don't like him either, I was just joking. What do you hate about this school so much anyway? They clearly take advantage of you even after you left this school. Well, you're not wrong, she chuckles to herself. ****. Is it possible for me to level up somewhere with absolutely no risk? Nope. If you're destined not to fight, you just won't fight. It was a bit disappointing, but I had already expected it. I then glanced up at the panels in front of me, a nostalgic sight that I hadn't seen in a few years. 7 years have passed with no progress. Hidden quest. Complete your first dungeon has been revealed, quest has been revealed, you are unable to obtain the hidden reward, failure to complete the task within 3 days will result in death, quest. Complete your first dungeon, description. You have rested and learned long enough, but deep within you, you yearn for the battlefield. You want to feel the sensation of your blade slashing through flesh. The sensation of warm, fresh blood splattering across your face, reward. Tattered magic ring, penalty upon failure. Death, time left. 71 hours remaining. Granny, we have the rest of the day off, right? Yeah, the first day starts tomorrow. Come on, read your emails. Sure, I'll just visit the dorm after. All it took was a quick Google search for me to find the easiest dungeon within the city, and to no surprise, it was extremely difficult for me. I then searched up if there were any lower-level dungeons in New York City, as it was only a day's travel from Amlas. It would even be faster if I got somebody to drive me there. But, disappointingly, the dungeons were only higher leveled. I let out a long groan as I gripped an iron spear in my hand and stared at the large cave in front of me. It was massive, with a pretty constant flow of adventurers traveling in and out of it. Excuse me, young man, but we cannot take responsibility for what happens in there, a guard comes up to me and says. A few guards were guarding the entrance to the dungeon as only people with passes could get through, but as I stole a pass from one of the people in Arthur's raid party, I was able to enter with ease. There wasn't an age limit to being an adventurer, but there was a pass you needed to take to ensure unnecessary deaths would be prevented. I'm sure you're strong as you got a pass at such a young age, but we cannot take responsibility, and everything that happens in there stays in there. He's right. Dungeons are like another world where anything can happen. Monsters attack you from all sides. Betrayal due to a crack in your trusted comrades. And the scariest thing to happen inside a dungeon is getting tortured by people who want you dead. There are no laws inside the dungeon, basically making it an every man for themselves type of situation. Yes, I'm aware, I mutter before walking past him and entering the dark cave. Chapter 16 Dungeon. Crystal Tortoise Sanctuary. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are no laws inside the dungeon, basically making it an every man for themselves type of situation. Yes, I'm aware, I mutter before walking past him and entering the dark cave. It wasn't as dark as the dungeon I had visited before, but if I ever ran into a monster, I would probably die instantly. But, there was no need to bring any equipment for the dark, as once I walked far enough into the cave with crystal spikes, a few notifications appeared in front of me. You have entered the dungeon. Crystal Tortoise Sanctuary, recommended level 5, the benevolent sanctuary has granted you the buff. Sanctuary vision. Suddenly, it looked as if the sun had appeared at the top of the room, revealing every nook and cranny of the large cave I was in. What I saw were bright red crystals lining the dome-shaped cave and a few of the crystals scattered around the dungeon's floor. Good thing I did my research, I mutter before making my way farther into the sanctuary. What was so good about this place is that the monsters are passive until attacked, but that doesn't mean you can take a nice, relaxing break upon killing one of these tortoises. They are large, about half my height, and almost as wide as they were tall. Their shell was made from the same type of crystals that lined the interior of the dome, so it was easy to figure out that their shells were pretty much indestructible. Their gray skin had a diamond pattern that shifted slightly onto its shell. But most importantly, the unique feature, or shall I say the unique skill of this monster, is a skill called resonance. I first stalked an adventurer who I assumed to be a newbie due to his freshly made leather armor and shaky appearance. I watched from atop a crystal spike that wasn't that high up, as I didn't have the strength to climb the big ones. But my stamina had definitely increased over the years as I went on a jog every other day. I lost motivation many times, but somehow I brought myself to go running again. Arg! The adventurer shouts as he swings his shodden sword down on the tortoise's almost impenetrable shell. Clang! The collision of the crystal and sword made a ringing sound that echoed through the dome, and the surrounding adventurers could already tell what was about to happen. The tortoise cried out a long and deep groan. A rumble came from the ground, and when the adventurer spun his head around to see where it was coming from, he suddenly saw a massive wave of the tortoises charging towards him. They were faster than a regular human, so a novice who just started was about to get trampled. The wave of tortoises let out a deep and long groan once again before knocking over the newbie adventurer and trampling him to pieces. Heads up! Somebody shouts towards the trampled corpse before laughing with his party. They continuously teased the dead corpse, even as the tortoises turned around for seemingly another round. But when I realized it wasn't another round of trampling, my pupils dilated, and a drop of sweat ran down the back of my neck. They're consuming him. I muttered to myself as I saw the tortoises chomp down on the fresh meat and swallow it, blood trailing down their beaked mouths. This wasn't in the articles that I read. And when I looked at the surrounding adventurers, I saw that they were shocked as well, since this wasn't something that occurred normally. Geez. This place might have changed a bit, I mutter, but have never heard of a dungeon changing. Yes, they can evolve, but not change. And how I know this place hasn't evolved is because the name changes upon evolving, and since it's an instant process that kills everybody inside, we would have known if it evolved already. Unless the city government wants to keep it a secret. But where is the benefit in that? Let's just go hunting, I muttered before climbing back down the crystal instead of epically jumping off it and landing in a superhero position. My knees and ankles would have snapped in half if I did that. I made my way to the first tortoise and stared it down. It stared back at me with its careless eyes, not showing even a hint of hostility. First, I activated tangible bloodlust, which began to rise from my spear, coating it and my arm in a blood-red aura. I felt power fill my body as it spread from my arm to the rest of my body. You have activated tangible bloodlust, your bloodlust reacts to your will to fight. I swung upwards with my spear, straight in front of the tortoise's face, causing it to pull its head back into its shell. But my spear was a bit special. There was the normal spear tip which was sharp and powerful, but right next to it, on the very end of the pole, was a small scythe blade. I had this weapon made especially for this dungeon as I'd be in here trying to grind for a while, and this was just the best bet. The scythe end of my spear penetrated under the shell and hooked right into the tortoise's face, killing it instantly. But just as I was about to pull out the spear, I felt part of my bloodlust get sucked into the corpse. The corpse then rumbled as if it was about to implode, so I took a few steps back and watched as the shell exploded off of the tortoise, leaving a gaping hole in the tortoise's back. They aren't like hermit crabs where the shells aren't a part of them, but the shell is actually part of their skeleton. Like a normal tortoise. I dodged the quickly falling shell before inspecting the halved tortoise corpse. 3 XP, what the hell was that, and a magic stone? I mutter. Suddenly, everybody around me began to chatter about something, so I quickly collected the stone and dashed farther into the dungeon while ensuring nobody was following me. I quickly found a quiet open space, so I sat down there and looked at the small red bead in my hand. Normally, these tortoises aren't supposed to have magic stones as they are too weak. Something is up, shing ksh shing ksh shing ksh. After killing a few more tortoises, I wiped the sweat from my chin before falling back onto the ground, completely exhausted. No matter how many tortoises I killed, none came after me as I didn't let them cry out for their comrades. You have one shot, and you need one shot to kill it. I looked over at my status, which had grown quite a bit. Status, name. Orion, race. Human, level. 3/10, 12/100, XP needed, HP, 10/10 MP 5/5 SP 5/5. Normal human, strength. 3. Normal human, defense. 3. Normal human, magic. 2. Normal human, speed. 3. Normal human, skills. Tangible bloodlust. With each level that I gained, I received one stat point like everybody else in the world. Asterisk cough star. Sigh. This is exhausting, I muttered before seeing a tortoise walk right up next to me and stare me down. I decided to just ignore it, so I turned my body and closed my eyes. Nobody was around, so I wouldn't get killed in here, at the very least. Roo, the tortoise beside me groaned. My eyes snapped open. There were more. Chapter 17 Levels and Strange Interaction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The tortoise beside me groaned. My eyes snapped open. There were more. They all opened their beak mouths before slowly moving them towards my body, so I immediately stood up by slamming the end of my spear against the ground. This shot me upwards just enough for me to land crouched and then dash back. They're so slow. Is it because they are attacking me while still passive? I muttered to myself before scanning the area around me. Though my senses, which I began to hone in the army, dulled over my unprogressive childhood, I could tell that somebody was watching me. Was it somebody? Or maybe something? Come out. I know you're there. I was still unsure, but this was the easiest and fastest way to confirm my suspicions. How did you know I was here? A distorted and low voice comes from behind me. But, there were only crystals behind me, what else could there be? I glanced backward. And I froze in place. There was a massive crystal tortoise head poking out the wall of the dome. You have encountered the boss of the dungeon. Crystal tortoise. The crystals behind me from before had now risen to be shown as the crystal tortoise's shell, which wasn't even fully revealed. It seemed like the remaining 3/4 of his body were stuck in the wall. Are you the boss of this dungeon? I ask. It seems like a big fish latched onto my bait, maybe a bit too big, though. Yes. The tortoise replied without opening its mouth. This is strange. Normally, low-level dungeons don't have bosses, but there was clearly one right in front of me. I was only planning on leveling up here a bit and then completing one of the wolf dungeons, but it seems I've encountered quite an interesting turn of events. How are you here? I've always been here, you have. Yes, *Psi star. I'm so confused. So, why me? I'm sure there are stronger people to reveal yourselves to, I say. 'Cause you have something that I'm attracted to. There, in your pocket, the tortoise's large eyes shift downwards to my right pocket, so I stuff my hand in and bring out a large golden key. Yes, that. How do you have that? I don't even know what it is. Suddenly, the key emitted a slight golden glow before settling down as if it was reacting to the tortoise in front of me. Such a shame. The tortoise says before sinking back into the ground. Dirt covered its head, and the crystal spikes from before returned to their original place. I glanced at the golden key in my hand, and it shimmered once again. I've had this for a while, but I've never been able to use it. In fact, I have no idea as to where I would use it. I sighed once again before continuing my tedious slaughter of killing a few crystal tortoises and then resting. Tangible bloodlust was the only reason I could penetrate the thick skin of the tortoise, so if I wanted to level up, I had to keep using it, which was a pain since my mana and stamina were so low. 3 XP, 3 XP, 3 XP, 3 XP, 3 XP, 3 XP, you have leveled up. I looked at my status once again and smiled in content. Status, name. Orion, race. Human, level. 6/10, 84/100, XP needed, HP, 10/10 MP 5/5 SP 5/5. Normal human, strength. 6. Normal human, defense. 6. Normal human, magic. 5. Normal human, speed. 6. Normal human, skills. Tangible bloodlust, I'm exhausted. Time to go back, I muttered to myself as I left the dungeon. You have left the dungeon. The sun was still beating down hard as always, so I shielded my eyes from the light and immediately left the vicinity. Only a few hours had passed, as 1 hour in the dungeon is equivalent to 10 minutes in the outside world. My gray attire was drenched in sweat, and I stunk so bad that I rushed through the hallways of the dorm and made my way to my room. The boys' and girls' dorm was in a separate building right next to the actual school. 547. 548. 549, there we go. I quickly shoved my silver key into the door and slammed the door open. What's that smell? I suddenly hear somebody say as I slam the door shut behind me. Huff 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 huff. I didn't even check out the small dorm as I quickly took off my clothes and hopped into the prestigious shower. The water was actually warm this time, unlike the boarding school which was on the verge of freezing cold and cold. After taking a shower, I wrapped myself in a clean white towel and checked out my body once again. I wasn't doing this to suck my own ego, but I wanted to see if my skin was getting any better. Strangely, I had no acne or blemishes upon entering puberty, but besides that, my skin was also very pale. It looked as if I was a walking corpse. Well, that's a bit of an overstatement, but it's not too far from the truth. Suddenly, I heard my stomach grumble in protest, so I made my way out of the bathroom and quickly changed into a sweatshirt and sweatpants. There were a few food chains back in the school building, but as I was too broke to afford any of it, I made my way to the cafeteria. Upon arriving, I walked past so many cliché kids that I thought they were filming a movie. A poor kid was getting bullied by one of the nobles. A group of nobles were sitting back in their chairs, pointing fingers and teasing other kids from across the room. Poor or rich kids, it didn't matter. What a bunch of leeches. Using their family name to have their way with anybody they take an interest in. And, of course, I wasn't an exception. They managed to pick me out due to my casual clothes, which were nothing compared to their luxurious and expensive attire. The clothing they wore was different, like what actual royals from the medieval times would wear. Oh, but instead of a boy coming up to me, it was a girl about my age. She had fiery red hair and bright gray eyes. "Neil," she says with a smile. "Huh. The fuck," I respond before walking away. I don't want any trouble right now. I haven't observed everybody enough for me to make a rash decision. "Hey!" she shouts, garnering the attention of everyone around. I didn't know if she shouted so loud on purpose, but gathering all the attention towards us just made my position more troublesome. "How dare you ignore me?" she shouts and slaps me in the face. It seems my senses have dulled quite a bit. A child actually slapped me. I chuckled to myself a bit before walking away. "Listen to me," the girl shouts, punching me in the back of the head, causing me to drop my plate of food onto the floor. My food. I just got it. I even managed to grab the last slice of chocolate cake. I stopped in place, staring at my dropped food. "Turn around. Now," she shouted, and I could already tell she had her arms crossed. Slowly, I turned my head around. Silence befell the large canteen as everybody stared at the scenario quickly unfolding. My eyes shifted off my food and towards the teenage girl. My eyes were completely devoid of life. "What?" I respond coldly. Chapter 18 Provocation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. My eyes were completely devoid of life. "What?" I responded coldly. "No, I can't make any rash decisions." My eyes returned to normal, but upon setting my eyes on the girl, I saw her shaking. "Why that you're just trash," she shouts before going to slap me again, and I receive it without even a peep. "Sure," I reply before walking away. The girl was too stunned to speak as I went to get another tray of food. After finishing dinner, I did a quick stretching session as my muscles were pretty sore from earlier today. "School starts tomorrow," I muttered before moving on to the next stretch. I then glanced at my body, which was friendlier than a piece of glass. Strangely, I had the urge to work out but didn't have the motivation to finish it. After a few push-ups, I had flashbacks to my previous life where we worked out pretty much every day, and it was so exhausting that I wanted to die. I guess I got my wish, but the gods do know that it is an expression, right? I ended my push-up session not even a minute in. So, I lay on my bed and stared up at my phone, which had my schedule completely laid out. The class sessions weren't as long as I thought since we had only 3 classes, but instead, that extra time was given for us to use. I didn't know if it was a test to see which students were motivated and which ones were not, but I knew something was up as it seemed like a complete waste of time from every angle. I decided to just go to sleep and think about it more in the morning. The morning was rough as everybody stared at me due to my inability to control my anger. I mean, how childish could I get? I was about to punch her because she knocked over my piece of chocolate cake. That thing still looked delicious, though, I muttered as I ate my toast, imagining it as chocolate cake. "What are you muttering to yourself about?" I suddenly hear somebody from over my shoulder. It was the girl from yesterday, and somebody who I assumed to be her guard stood next to her, menacingly like a bloodthirsty beast. Wait, is this bloodlust? I've never felt it directly targeted at me before, but I could already feel that it was familiar. Then, maybe I can block it. I was about to activate the skill but quickly decided to hold back as I didn't want to provoke the guard. Killing me is probably as easy as killing an ant. "Yes," I respond. "I want to have a talk with you," she says, and with the urge of the guard next to her, she forcefully brought me outside the cafeteria, where we stood in the hallway. Her eyes continuously glared at me, but I didn't glare back. "I will give you a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," she said, and I suppressed the urge to roll my eyes. "What is it? Speak with respect," she shouts. Sure, I was willing to submit to her for just a bit but not give up my pride. ****. I'll pay you tons of money and even give you an adventure pass if you become my butler. You'll be unable to reject any of my orders, but at least you'll have a better life. She talked in an arrogant tone as if I was already going to accept her proposal. So annoying. Just go away, I say, shooing her off. I've already collected enough information on this city to allow me to survive, but it's just a matter of how I play my cards. One slip up, and I'll either get imprisoned or killed, and I'm leaning towards the latter. Well, I did get up bright and early in the morning to research because I expected this to happen, so maybe it wasn't worth it. Why that you dare? I guess now I just have to provoke them, so they actually make a move. Class is about to start. Can I go? The girl was fuming in anger, and when I glanced at the guard, I noticed he was staring down at the girl with eyes filled to the brim with annoyance. It seems the guard himself isn't a noble and is actually down to earth. I brush her hand off my shoulder before heading to my first class, Magic Theory. Wait. Maybe that will work. Actually. Yeah, that's a pretty good idea, I muttered. I was very impressed by the huge learning rooms which were seated like a coliseum. The class was interesting, and I took quite a liking to it as it was something completely alien to me. Magic. Or shall I say mana? A source of energy, not from this world. We still don't know where it is, but we summon the mana through the system, which is then guided by skills. The skills allow us to mold mana into forms of attack, defense, or support. Now, I will ask a very basic question that you haven't learned about but should be able to figure out with everything that I have just said. The teacher announced. Everyone leaned forward in their seats, intent on answering the question. What other source apart from humans holds mana inside themselves? A few people, including me, shot their hands up. Yes. Daler, he calls on a kid in the front row. Monsters, not exactly, and you'll see why later on in the lesson, but, incorrect. Next, he glances at me. Yes, Orion, dungeons, yes, correct. Dungeons hold mana inside them. In fact, we are more similar to dungeons than living monsters. Isn't that pretty crazy? The professor was excellent at keeping the class and my attention on him. He was interesting to listen to and always answered questions, no matter the person's status. Okay. Now that we're reaching the end of class, I'll have to finish the lesson and not answer any other questions. If you would like to, you can come to me after class. Everybody nodded their heads. Good. Now, where do you think the system came from? The system. Well, obviously from a foreign place, right? The man glanced at me as if he had read my mind. He shook his head slightly, signaling that I was incorrect. You look like a fish. His eyebrow twitched for a moment, and just to make sure it wasn't a coincidence, I said another unnecessary thing. Your class sucks ass. His eyes shifted towards me again before rolling. You're built like a spicy chicken nugget. This time, there was no response, so I assumed he disconnected from my mind or something. He's powerful, I muttered before feeling a pair of eyes crawl all over my body. It came from the seat next to me, so all I had to do was just turn my head. What? Does he not like you? The dark elf who sat beside me asks. He was a bit taller than me and had a long skinny body with dark chocolate-colored skin. His pupils were a pale gray, similar to the girl who keeps attempting to enslave me for something. Either to abuse, get tedious work done, or, other pleasures, you could say. Ick. Disgusting. Finally, the dark elf's white hair was locked and then pulled back into a ponytail behind his head. He was the only one in my row as everybody avoided me, probably due to the incident from yesterday. Why they are avoiding me? I don't know. No. He's spying on my thoughts with some type of magic, I responded. Oh. I wish I was smart enough to be spied on by the professor, he chuckles to himself, and just as the professor caught us chatting it up, the bell rung, signaling the end of the 1-hour period. What's your name? I asked the boy. Finder, what about you? Orion, nice to meet you too, this guy is pretty chill. Chapter 19 Deadly Side Quest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Orion, nice to meet you too, this guy is pretty chill. I got out of my seat, and as I had an hour and a half of free time, I decided to use it for hunting in the dungeon as I had nothing else to do. Huff 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 huff. This is so annoying, I muttered to myself as I fell back onto the rocky ground and stared up at my status. Status, name. Orion, race. Human, level. 9/10, 28/100, XP needed, HP, 10/10 MP 5/5 SP 5/5. Normal human, strength. 9. Normal human, defense. 9. Normal human, magic. 8. Normal human, speed. 9. Normal human, skills. Tangible bloodlust, this is so painfully boring, then why don't you make it a bit fun? I hear a low voice ask from within my head. It didn't come from anywhere but my mind. Oh, what's up? The massive crystal tortoise, which was the boss of the dungeon, revealed himself behind me, before yawning from boredom. The inside of his massive mouth looked like an abyss, ready to suck in anything, even the world itself. How many years has it been since I was last awake? The giant tortoise asks. About 1 day. Well, that's in the outside world, so maybe like 3 days. Anyway, what do I have to do to make it fun? I ask. Are you really that dumb? Ugh, so he wants me to do that. I guess I could try it, I respond and let my body, mana, and stamina recover. I was back to normal in only a few minutes and used my spear to support me upwards. I glanced at the roaming tortoises around me and activated, tangible bloodlust. Your lust of blood slowly increases, the solidified bloodlust strengthens your body, my body became much stronger, and it felt as if I was as light as a feather. Such a cheat. First, I walked up to the tortoise a few feet ahead of me, and axe kicked its shell. It deflected my kick off of its spiky shell, and the tortoise groaned after noticing it was being attacked. The groan alerted the surrounding tortoises, and upon seeing them all sprint at an ungodly speed towards me, I already began to regret my decision. They're not that fast, the old tortoise says, but I didn't care about his opinion. The first turtle tried to nip at the back of my knee, but I stepped out of the way before spinning my spear downwards and hooking the tortoise's face. That's the first, I mutter through gritted teeth before sprinting towards the only open direction and putting some space between myself and the targets. Only groans came out of their mouths as they charged towards me. Swoosh! I readied my spear in front of me, ready to kill at least one of them before walking away, but all of a sudden, a new notification popped up in front of me. Next side quest has been revealed, side quest. Become proficient with your only skill, description. This side quest has been revealed because you are in a tight spot and need the motivation to continue the fight. No running away here, reward. Skill book. Spear coding, penalty upon failure. Death, time left. 10 minutes, TCH. This fucking system, I muttered through gritted teeth and swung my spear upwards, hooking the first tortoise in front of me, but the ones from beside all opened their beaked jaws. I jumped up, dodging the first two, but another one just barely managed to nip off my shoe, leaving me to fight barefoot for the rest of the match. I tucked my body in to go into a dive roll in order to recover easily without losing mobility. My hands tapped against the ground, and the roll was successful as I ran in a U-shaped direction, right back towards the tortoises. Shing! My spear tore through the face of another tortoise, but the others were so close to biting me that they even stepped on my left foot, completely breaking it. I gritted my teeth through the pain before jumping back and landing on my right leg. Good thing it's your dominant leg, the old tortoise comments. Once again, I ignored him before swinging up, tearing through the face of another turtle. But, I could feel my mana and stamina quickly draining. Do I really have to master this? I muttered as I counted 8 more tortoises. The blood-red aura around me began to wane, so I racked my brain of any ideas. But even as I hopped around on one leg and racked my brain of any possible idea of how to master this skill, the blood-red aura continued to wane but in a wave formation. The aura on my spear got thicker, and then it shrank, thickening the aura on my body. Ah, I see, I muttered before controlling the bloodlust wrapped around my body to the spear I held tightly within my hands. The process of ripping the aura off my body left cuts all over me, but eventually, I managed to thicken the aura on my spear. Then I'll create more blades. It felt as if I was moving the 11th finger as the blood-red aura split into 2 more scythe-like blades right next to the original. Shing, I swung up, killing 3 tortoises, but what I didn't expect was for my blades to rip all the way through their heads, splitting them in half. You're quite good, human. I dashed to the side again and swung up, killing 2 more tortoises, leaving only 3 left. It was the perfect amount. Shing upon side-stepping, all of them snapped their heads towards me without even thinking of the consequences. Huff huff. The blood-red aura around my spear withdrew back into my body, but the fight was over, and a few panels appeared before me. You have completed the side quest. Become proficient with your only skill, reward has been granted. The next side quest will be revealed once ready, but I also got a few notifications of XP. I was so close to maxing out my level, but when I went to go check the time, I noticed I only had about 10 minutes until my next class. You're going already? Yeah, I got class. Bring me some tasty treats the next time you come. I might even teach you something, the old tortoise says, and as I was running towards the exit, I gave him a thumbs up. Mr. Orion. It is the first day, and you are already late. Also, why is your hair so wet? The teacher says, crossing his arms firmly. I took a shower, ****. Jeez. Next time come to class on time, but for your punishment today, you'll be sitting out as we go over the basics. Well, I don't need to review the basics, so I guess I'll just scope out the class. Actually, I should study up on that girl's family, shouldn't I? The classroom was a pretty small stadium with one of the walls having bleachers against it, so I sat down there and took out my phone. Let's see. Red hair families in AMLAs. There we go. I was pretty content with the information I found, but just as I was about to go watch the class, a familiar face appeared before me. Oh, searching me up, are you? Annoying little shit. Chapter 20 Acquiring a Class. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Oh, searching me up, are you? Annoying little shit. What do you want? I asked the girl in front of me. Wanted to see what my future butler was doing. She responds with a smirk that clearly shows her intentions. It seems they're planning to make a move soon. *****. Why are you going so far for such a trifling little thing as myself? Because I always get what I want. No matter what it is. Her smile crept me out as it seemed a bit sadistic, but I decided to brush it off as I didn't expect a girl as young as her to have that type of personality. But when I glanced at her again, I started to have second thoughts. What a weirdo, I muttered. And it seems I hurt her pride as she immediately slapped me across the cheek. The sound was so loud that it echoed through the training room, garnering the attention of my classmates who were learning the basic spear moves. What happened? The teacher shouted, and the girl before me glared at me with such intent that I thought it would pierce my head. I just sighed before ignoring the instructor. Hey, isn't that the guy? Yeah, I suppose so. He actually offended the Wunny family. How idiotic could you be? As I walked down the halls of my school, I could overhear a few conversations directed or about me. But they didn't bother, and I quickly made my way to lunch. I took everything I thought was delicious and sat next to Finder, who was alone as well. We talked and ate for a bit until I felt something wet drip onto my head and down my neck and shoulders. Everybody around me began to laugh, and when I glanced back, I saw the same red-haired girl from before, standing behind her lackeys who had poured milk on my head. So childish. I quickly got up from my seat and left the cafeteria, unfazed by the childish taunts. I guess I should go to the dungeon now. What's wrong? The massive tortoise asked as I continued to genocide his children casually. The new, spear coating, skill that I acquired came in handy as it didn't use nearly as much mana per minute as tangible bloodlust. And thankfully, it reinforced my strength enough for me to pierce the thick skin of the tortoises. I ran into a few problems. But once this is washed over, I can live my life in content, I respond before slashing upwards. Sounds annoying, yep. Very annoying. Oh, finally, I glanced up at the panel before me with a smile. You have leveled up, you have reached the max level, you can now select your class. The singular panel suddenly split into 3 panels, revealing 2 basic classes that didn't really catch my attention and one other that slightly intrigued me. Class. Spearsman, description. You have maxed out your level while being proficient with the spear. Your proficiency will only increase with this class, and you'll feel more familiar with foreign spears that you haven't used before. Requirements. Some proficiency with the spear, 8 strength, class bonus. Plus 5 speed, plus 5 strength, pretty good. I mutter before glancing at the next option. Class. Magician, description. You have maxed out your level while being proficient with some sort of magic. Your proficiency will only increase with this class, and you'll feel more familiar with foreign spells that you hadn't used before. Requirements. Some proficiency with a type of magic, 8 magic, class bonus. Plus 8 magic, it's alright, but it doesn't suit my style. And finally. Class. Strategist, decryption. You have maxed out your level while being proficient in strategizing. Your proficiency with creating strategies will only increase with this class, and you'll be able to adapt to stressful situations quickly. Requirements. Proficiency in strategizing, class bonus. Addition of new neurons, clearer mind, class drawbacks, 0.2 strength. 2 speed, 0.2 defense, are you kidding me? It was looking so good until that last part. Shit, what? One of the classes had a drawback. Yeah. How did you know? It's a reaction everybody has. Anyway, can you stop bugging me? I need to think this over. Eat your cakes over there or something. I wave my hand towards the pile of cakes that I had bought for the massive tortoise. And strangely, he did end up shutting up even though I was just joking. Upon mulling over it for half an hour and weighing the outcomes of the classes and my future with the classes, I finally selected one. Congratulations on receiving a class, you have selected Spearsman. Basic stats have received their buff, advanced stats have received their class. Specific buff, status, name. Orion, race. Human, class. Spearsman, level 125th, 1/100, XP needed, HP, 35 35ths MP 10 10ths SP, 15 15ths. Normal human, strength 20. Normal human, defense 10. Normal human, magic 9. Normal human, speed 20. Normal human, skills. Tangible bloodlust, spear coating, I have class in a bit. I'll bring more cakes once I've traded in all these crystals, I say before slinging the brown sack over my back and making my way towards the exit. The only way I could afford all these cakes was because I was finally receiving a bit of pocket change that I didn't need to work for 8 hours a day in a coffee shop. The pocket change came from me exchanging the tiny magic cores within the tortoises. The first step to retrieving them was: stick your blade into the dead corpse of the tortoise and inject tangible bloodlust into it, bursting them open. Next step: retrieve the magic core and throw it into the sack. After a few minutes of running, I finally reached the exit and left the dungeon. I soon felt the night vision fade away, and I made my way to the nearby market where I would sell these stones. These will all go for 2 gold coins and a few silver coins. Thanks, transfer it to my bank account, I respond, and as I was on my way back to the high school campus, I saw a notification on my phone confirming the transfer of the money. Now, all I had to do was get back to campus, take a shower, and get to class. This time I also gave myself enough time to actually not be late as I was interested in this class. Guns, huh? The travel back to my dorm room wasn't peaceful though, as people began to talk about me more and more. Even when I arrived at my room, people were there waiting for me. What? I ask. Nothing, they snicker before running off down the hallway. I ignored them once again before entering my room and taking a quick shower. It was nice and refreshing, and just as the transition bell rang, I was on my way to class. The same gossip continued around me even as I entered the large classroom, similar to the spear theory classroom. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome, the teacher greeted all of us with a smile and we were directed to sit in the center of the room.